The views and opinions expressed in the following podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the producers, the affiliates, or digital platforms hosting this podcast. All content is for the purposes of education, conjecture, and at times entertainment. We promote inclusiveness and diversity. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Into the Deep with Jay Costa.
Welcome to Into the Deep. I'm Jay Costa. I am ecstatic about today's guest. She's been a therapist for over 20 years and is a licensed clinical social worker. Today's guest is Jessica Raistrick. Jessica is a recent author of the book, The Gut Check, How to Reconnect with Your Intuition. She's also the founder of Inner Truth Consulting. We talk about so much in this episode, like Jessica's feelings that healthcare currently is in a weird place. With her newest book, The Gut Check, Jessica wanted to curate material for those with limited time to be able to get access to the information and the guidance that they would need. So, join me as we seek light and journey into the deep with Jessica Raistrick. Enjoy. Jessica, thank you so much for joining me. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Well, I know who you are, but if you wouldn't mind sharing who you are and what it is you do, my friend.
Sure. So my name is Jessica Raistrick. I do a couple different things. So I am a therapist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been a therapist for over 20 years. I also am a Reiki master, and as well, I'm a recent author.
Heck yeah. That's great. I was going to actually ask you about the gut check. So, tell us more.
So the gut check is really, my intention for it was to give back, because I know that, like my husband and I talk about it a lot, about how with the way that our world is, right? Healthcare is in a weird place right now, whether it's mental health care, whether it's, medical health care. And so it's hard for people to access resources. And I know that finances are tough. Our economy is all crazy. So my thought process was, what if I can put something together where people have this little book that is a quick read? Because one of my biggest things, honestly, is that I feel like people take a really long time to say something pretty simple. And so I wanted to make it short, concise, sweet, so that people could literally be in the bathroom hiding from their kids for a second, reading a chapter. You know what I mean? Because it's hard, like when we have kids and life and crazy, like there's so much going on that I hear people all the time say to me, I just want to read a book. So I get it. So I kept that in mind. And basically what it is it's just stuff that I've learned over the years, whether it's in my own personal journey or it's through, people that come into my office, and just taking these little snippets and snapshots of things. And at the end of each chapter, I put like a question or something for people to think about, and then give them some space to journal if that's their thing. If not, that's cool too. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to do.
And I think that's wonderful, especially like you said, to your point earlier, in this world right now, in this day and age. Especially, with, I would say during 2020, during the pandemic times and lockdown, there was a definite need for more mental health resources, and even post. There's always been a need, but I personally, I benefit from having a therapist, before and through that time. And so why do you think it's so challenging for people to take that step to actually want to seek out a therapist or a social worker or anybody that can help them?
I think there are a lot of things. I think that one of the steps that's challenging is that we all have an inner truth, no pun intended, because that's the name of my company. We all have like, our intuition is there. It's alive in all all of us. But a lot of times for people to go speak to somebody, they know that they're going to have to look at shit they don't want to look at. Do you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that's scary. And I get it because listen, I have been in therapy on and off throughout my life. And that's why I do what I do, because it's to me, the greatest gift ever. But it's hard. It really is hard. So I think that's one of the things that's challenging. I think finding time. Our culture has gotten to this place where it's just like, go, 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 and your kids are in one direction, you're going in another direction, trying to balance all these things. And for parents, it can be challenging. Like, my kids' needs are first, and I'll get to it when I can. But I want to challenge that thought process. You know what I mean? As parents, healthy marriage, healthy family. Like, when you're taking care of you and you and your spouse are on the same team, the kids will be great. They really will. And I feel like we've gotten caught up in the have tos and the shoulds and the social media, everybody posting like, hey, in Bali, hey, going here. And it's like, it's such horseshit. I'm sorry. It's like, that's not real. It's awesome. I'm glad people are having a good time, but no one's posting. And when people post about, things that are sad, nobody wants a part of it. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I think we've become a result of our culture, which has just gone so far in a different direction.
Great point. I feel like, especially from when, growing up, we didn't have the internet. I mean, gosh, the internet, for me, I wasn't introduced to it until I was already like in my teens. And again, it was a completely different kind of internet than what we know today. Sure, there were chat rooms and things like that. But, this social media aspect of things, where people are posting these images, and it's this constant, and I'm going to date myself here by saying, the keeping up with the Joneses, or the Rockefellers, so to
Totally.
speak, it's like everybody's trying to compete with somebody else's lifestyle. And
Right.
I've just seen that as being completely unhealthy.
Totally. And what it does is, like, even with our kids, what it does is it disconnects people from their intuition, right? It disconnects people from themselves. So what I keep seeing is just this constant cycle of overthinking, and people are not in their bodies anymore because they're too busy, like, looking at what everyone else is doing or finding ways to zone out that are on an electronic. It's so you're not really helping yourself. And I've noticed that a lot of people really struggle to just sit still, And here's the thing. The other purpose for my book is, like, we talk about mindfulness, we talk about sitting still, and those things are fabulous. I'm a huge supporter of that. But a lot of people don't know what that means or how to even do that. Like, mindfulness is a skill that you develop. It's not something that you just sit still for 5 minutes and all of a sudden you're mindful. Do you know what I mean? And so the goal of my book is to help people in ways that are tangible start connecting to themselves now so that they can engage in these mindfulness activities and truly experience it, not just talk about, yeah, I did some mindfulness today, but not even really know what that encompasses.
Also, great points. And I find that too, even amongst peers, through colleagues at work, friends, when you talk about mindfulness and people, "Oh, I don't have time to meditate. I don't know how to meditate. I can't sit still." Why, why is it we don't allow ourselves, not us, but in general, like you said earlier, you touched upon so many great things, this hustle and bustle, get the kids somewhere, go to work, do our things. And that whole self-care piece has just gone out the window, and we're not the best versions of ourselves. So therefore, by proxy, the kids can't be the best versions of themselves.
100%. 100%. And I think what I see a lot of is parents' fear. Okay. So what happens is a lot of parents are scared if my kids are not in sports and not doing this and not going, they're going to be drug addicts. It's this like all or nothing thought process. And a lot of parenting is led by fear. And so it's my kids have to be busy so that they are healthy, so that they do well in school, so that they do all these things. Also, too, let's not kid ourselves. It's also this like statusy thing. Oh, well, my kids do this and my kids do this. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's not good for our children because what we're teaching them to do is ignore themselves. So, like when our kids are tired, we focus more on the fact that, well, you committed to this, so you got to do it. But then what we're telling them is ignore the fact that your body's screaming at you, saying, I'm exhausted and I can't do this anymore, and just push through and suck it up. You know what I mean? And it's so we inadvertently are teaching our kids to do the same, to be on the same hamster wheel we potentially are on as adults. And it just is not, we're creating stress and anxiety, And these kids are suffering big time.
100% agree. And for me, gosh, I have such a wonderful relationship with my parents. My mom passed away a couple of years ago, but my parents,
Sorry.
thank you. Yeah, she was a wonderful one, my best friend, sincerely. And and my dad was working hard, but like there was this model of like, even if I'm sick, I'm going to work and I'm going to do this. Like I never saw self-care in my dad. It was always this like, gotta go to work, do this thing. And so my mom would always reinforce self-care for my dad, would always reinforce self-care for my brother and myself. And so through adulthood, I've had to remind myself of those things.
Oh, 100%. And my parents weren't as bad. My parents were pretty good about self-care. Actually, they were good about that balance. I, though, growing up, definitely got into the pattern of like, go, go, go. Like I was in a ton of sports. I was in a ton, and I definitely can say it wasn't because my parents encouraged that. It was more my desire. But what I realized was that it was my way of managing my emotions at that time. So it was me going, going, going because there was stuff going on inside that I wasn't a huge fan of and didn't know what to do with it. Right. So that's the other thing is that there is that line between a healthy busy and avoidance. And I think what people don't realize is that just because you're doing something healthy doesn't mean you're not avoiding. Like we can abuse anything in life. We can abuse exercise. We can abuse water. We can abuse, anything. So I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. There is that line of healthy distraction, which is very real and serves a wonderful purpose, and avoidance, right? So that line looks like if something is a healthy distraction, where it remains just a healthy distraction is when you're able to come back to the emotion that you were separating from. But when you continue to stay in healthy distraction, that becomes avoidance.
Right. So essentially, not confronting those feelings or emotions, you're just escaping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like anything, right? Like if we have a challenge with our partner and we have a discussion and we both agree like we need to take a break, or one person says, all right, time out, I'm going to get sassy, I got to step back. Then it's your responsibility to go back when you're calm and say, hey, can we check in about that? Because when you don't go back to check in, whether it's with yourself or with your partner or with anyone you've had a conflict with, what you're doing is you're just brushing it under the rug, suppressing it, ignoring it, however you want to phrase it. But that stuff builds, that stuff sets up shop in our bodies, which is why I started doing Reiki, is because there needs to be that healthy balance of moving the emotions from an emotional standpoint, but then also moving them throughout our bodies. And my husband's a naturopath and he also specializes in Chinese medicine. And so he and I started, just exploring like, how can we continue to help people to move things emotionally, spiritually, and physically?
Absolutely. And gosh, and even in my experience too, when you start really feeling and thinking about these blockages of energy and how we don't allow ourselves sometimes to release them. But then the moment we face them, work them, whether it's through exercise or seeing a practitioner of Reiki or anything, we're able to kind of eliminate these blockages and get that flow again. We notice a difference. Why do you think people are so apprehensive to even try Reiki?
Oh, do you have an hour or two? I think that I literally have people because, okay, so I lost my father 5 years ago and it
I'm so
was
sorry.
thank you to your, like, earth shattering, right? Like,
Yep.
to lose a parent is just something. And I feel like even though we're older, we're pretty young to lose parents, right? It was
Yep.
definitely not on my radar.
Right.
Um, but what happened is my dad, after passing, gave me the best gift he could have ever given me, which was the gift of his intuition. Meaning, I went through this whole like spiritual upheaval after he died and was like, there's no way he's gone. Like, there's no way. That just doesn't sit right with me. I know he's watching. I know he's there. Dad, give me signs. Show me something. You know what I mean? And so, and I'll get back to your question. So he would start showing me signs, and that's how I ended up getting into Reiki. Was I was like, there is more. Like, I knew it in here, but then I started seeing it, right? And so as I developed my Reiki skills, I can connect with people that have passed. I can even connect with people that are here. And so I've had people say to me like, okay, now you're freaking me out a little bit because things come through. I can't help it. Right. Like, but it's amazing. And so the reason why I think that people struggle is because we do. In my book, I wrote a chapter about, do you have data to back that up? I feel like we have become so focused on what are the statistics, what are the studies, all this like concrete scientific stuff. And as a result, we've lost the ability to discern and to have faith in something outside of ourselves. And so essentially, for people to come to me, I'm asking them to put that aside for a little bit. And I'm asking them to honor that it's possible that there could be something else, right? And that scares the shit out of people. It really scares them because it's like, you can't taste it, you can't touch it, you can't, you know what I mean? Like, that's not real. Or some people will. I think the most impact I have is when people come to see me that I don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do Reiki and I tell them stuff that there's no way I would have known this. Like, you can't make this stuff up, you know? And it could go either way, right? They could be like, oh, wow. Or it could go, yeah, she's a nut. And I don't want to go back to her. You know what I mean? Like, so I feel like it's fear. It's fear of the unknown. It's fear of the fact that I'm challenging belief systems that are either inherited or that they have solidified. Or if someone is really religious, I'm challenging that belief that it's just God or just whomever.
Those are great points too. A lot of individuals tend to favor tradition versus truth, or like you said, their discernment that we've seemingly gotten away from, but we can even see in the sciences where things that were once fringe, like quantum physics are now, it's like, this is reality of it. There's this, you know, congruence between spirituality and science. And that was something that, was hogwash, 20 years ago, 30
Right.
years ago. So it's amazing that these conversations that individuals can have today that, maybe people like ourselves were having 5-10 years ago, but, people are now just kind of coming into to actually give it that experience. So when you talk about that intuition, it's interesting because I'm always of the opinion that everyone has it, but not everyone knows they have it or how to tap into it based on either upbringing, dogma, et cetera, et cetera. Curious what your thoughts are on that.
I agree. I think that how I see kind of the life cycle, right, is when we're born into this world, we are born so pure, right? So innocent, so pure. And this is where, right, nature versus nurture comes in. So as little kids, I feel like what happens is as adults, we can become so kind of solidified in our ego or in our wounds, in whatever it is, our disillusionment, that we end up inadvertently, not intentionally, but inadvertently teaching our children not to listen to their intuition. right? Because their purity is so beautiful that if we have become disillusioned, it's like, oh, just wait 10 years, you'll figure it out. You know what I mean? And we've all said something stupid like that at some point. But what I've learned through my kids is when we as parents just shut up sometimes and just listen, our children see a lot more than we give them credit for seeing. And a lot of the times it's because of our own wounds and our own issues that we can't see what they're saying or hear what they're saying because it bucks up against our insecurities, what we perceive as our knowledge base. So having that said, we start out with intuition. I truly believe that. But it's a matter of whether or not we are in an environment that supports honing it or that supports squashing it. Because I have a lot of people that I work with and do Reiki with that have amazing intuition, amazing. But what's happened is why they're with me is because somewhere along the line, they've gotten away from it. They know something's there because you can feel it. You feel it in your soul. It's this like, something's not right here. Something's not right here. But people, a lot of times, will ignore it because they have nothing, they have no proof. Mm-hmm. Right. And so other people around us, I'll give you a perfect example. A couple years ago, had some medical issues. Something I knew in my soul, something was wrong with my uterus. Like I was so sure. I had no proof of anything. I had a bunch of tests. No. Nothing's wrong. It's your pelvic floor, which is muscular. I was like, it is not my pelvic floor. Anyway, I went to doctor, and I have no problems arguing with people. In case you haven't, I will like stand up. I'm not going to say, oh, okay. So I pushed. Anyway, long convoluted route, long convoluted story. I end up having to have surgery. They send my feminine parts to pathology. Comes back, I had a disease in my uterus. But because no one saw it on tests or no one believed it, I was ignored and I was completely like poo-pooed. And I remember saying to my husband, I was like, because the day after surgery, I felt like $1 million, like $1 million. And I was like, I knew, but it's so frustrating and I feel badly. And that's also why I wrote this book, because I feel badly at how many people go to providers, doesn't matter whether it's mental health, medical, and they know something is wrong, but they get ignored. It's wrong. And that's their intuition speaking. When they know something's wrong, even though they can't prove it, we need to be better at listening.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think as a culture and as a society, we wait to talk.
And I'm so passionate about this. Like, I want people to trust themselves. I want to help people because when we don't trust ourselves in relationships, it shows up in unhealthy ways. When we don't trust ourselves in, our learning our limits, it shows up everywhere. If we aren't able to listen to ourselves, 99% of the time we go, oh, I knew it and I should have listened to myself.
Yep. And you always have that aha moment, It's like, I knew it.
Totally.
Something told me. That's so fascinating.
Right.
Trying to figure out what it is, this connection to consciousness, however anyone wants to describe it.
Well, and I think what it is too is connection to our bodies, because our bodies will tell us something's off before it may even get to our head. Right? Like when anxiety, a lot of anxiety is a battle within ourselves, right? Like we're actively ignoring what our body's trying to communicate. So like, and I see it all the time and I've done it too, your stomach starts grumbling and it's like, oh, I'm just hungry, or, oh, I'm just this, like we push it off on something, but it may be something that you ate. Your body's telling you, please don't send that down your gullet again. You know what I mean? But because we're so disconnected and we're spending so much time up here, we minimize ourselves. and we ignore, and there are also a lot of ways that spiritually, are like the universe will talk to us, whether it's like an ache in your arm or, cause your right side's masculine, left side's feminine. Like there are so many things going on at any given time, but we need to stop. We need to slow down to be able to hear it.
What do you think are some best practices or maybe some things that, maybe you've implemented in your life or that you would encourage others to implement in their life to slow down and listen?
So one of the things I say, which in the book is the pause. The pause can be used for everything. So a pause in a conversation. If you are in a conversation and you can feel yourself getting hot, you feel your stomach start to turn, even if you can't identify what's going on in that moment, just stop. Say, okay, I need a timeout. Can you give me 10 minutes? Or I got to take a step back and just check in with yourself, right? The pause can be implemented when someone asks you if you want to do something. Instead, especially if you're someone that's like, yeah, say, hey, that sounds awesome. Let me check in with my partner, or if you don't have a partner, let me check in with my calendar and I will be back to you by the end of the day. Stop responding right away. And that, I think, is the first step for anybody, right? You have to take that space to just feel, hear, allow. And another thing that I encourage people to do, and I know that there's a lot of talk about this too, but just being outside, whether it's outside for 5 minutes, sitting and just kind of dazing off into space or watching a bird at the bird feeder or whatever it is, but just getting change of scenery, right? For a couple minutes, taking a walk. I love taking walks, like getting out for a walk and just kind of observing. It's not hard. Sometimes what I'll tell people to do is literally set it in your calendar, whether it's on your phone, whether it's whatever, like schedule time. And for some people that are over scheduled, right? That schedule every second of their day, I ask them to start just with 5 minutes. Just set a timer for 5 minutes and sit there and force yourself to do nothing. And then write down what your body's doing, right? Is your leg moving? Is your stomach turning? Does your chest get tight? Right? Like we just have to start somewhere. It doesn't have to be a big grandiose message or, change, but just start.
I love that. It's so fascinating because I feel like and cell phones have absolutely had such a negative impact on the ability to just be. And
It's true.
it's wild to me that people can inherently know it. And I'm guilty of it too. I'm not going to, sit here and say I've never been guilty of it 100%. But I've also made myself more mindful I shut it off. I put it down. I put it away, put it in another room, go outside. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that a younger generation that, because, we didn't grow up with cell phones, but this generation they've been born into it. A younger generation has been born into it. That's all they know. So what is that going to look like?
I think that it can go a couple different directions, right? Just a cute little anecdote. I went to go see my mom, my cousin and I had been wanting to go see Bruno Mars. And for my cousin's birthday, it was a big birthday. So we're like, let's go. We're getting tickets. We get there. He takes your phones. So what they do is they make you put your they make you put your phones in this like case that locks and you get to hold your phone with you, but you can't use it. And like the second song in, he was like, I have a brand new song for you. And he starts singing. He's like, I got your phone. It was hilarious, but it was brilliant, right? It was brilliant. And so how I feel is with our children and these younger generations, we can't ignore that this is a part of their lives, right?
Right.
It's just like Atari, when Atari first came out. It's just like when the television first came out. Although they weren't as portable as things are now, that is different. But I come from the stance of we need to teach them how to use it in a balanced way. We need to teach them how to be able to put it down, and we need to teach them how to use it properly. If we go to the extreme and say, no phones, we're not doing phones in this family, blah, blah, I get that philosophy. I can empathize with it. And I don't think that's realistic because all the children have phones. So then we're in the place of our kids getting teased because they don't have a phone, or they're not able to connect with the other kids because they don't have a phone, right? Like, so there are all these layers of stuff that get involved. So I'm of the philosophy it takes work to balance things. And every time we find a balance, right, something comes in, we have a child, we get married, we do all these things, and we have to find a new balance. But that's life. Life is about being adaptable. Life is about learning how to shift and pivot. And so I feel like the sooner we can teach our kids that through talking about it, but also through modeling it, the better suited they're going to be as they get older.
100% concur. And I love that, bringing it back to just balance, that is everything. Health, the world, life, everything, that balance, the yin, the yang, it's been there. It's been written down through antiquity, and we somehow avoid balance at times.
Mm-hmm. So true. It's so true. And I feel like, in life, the pendulum swings, right? The cell phones came out, and internet, like it was this big boom, right? And so everybody's like, bah, 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 bah. And then from like diving in so deep, then we start to see the unintended consequences. And then you see the pendulum swing all the way back to the other side of like whoa, 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 whoa. And so I feel like we can create balance without swinging so far to the right or to the left. But it takes conscious effort, and it takes a lot of effort, just like relationships, just like maintaining our health, just anything. It has to be intentional.
I think going back even a little bit, just bringing into this, talking about some intuition, and sometimes knowing that you need to make a change, feeling that you need to make a change, yet not taking that step. There are a lot of folks that probably, maybe even listening to this or watching this, that feel like something's either wrong or that they need to balance things out, maybe set boundaries. What advice would you give somebody who maybe is on the precipice and might need to take that step?
Start small. It's my favorite quote, and I have this on our fridge, is people often fear change because they focus on what they have to lose instead of focusing on what they have to gain. So very often when we approach change, there is fear of the unknown, and there's fear of letting go, right? And our culture talks about letting go like it's like, throwing a napkin out in the garbage. Like, oh, just let it go. Just let it go. It's not that easy. If it was that easy, everyone would let it go, But it's about making change in ways that feel good to you. So an example is I had to make some major nutritional shifts with my health stuff that was going on. I literally cried like a 5-year-old. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was like, you mean I can't have fluid? Like, I was devastated. And so we looked at and worked on what is the smallest thing I can change that'll make the biggest impact. And that's where I started. Start with something that feels attainable, that feels achievable. So for me, it was taking out this one specific area, and I didn't have to do it forever, but just to rebalance my body, I had to do it for a short period of time. And I felt good, right? You build the momentum and it's like, oh, I got this. I can do this. And then you make another shift. But it's when we go like gung ho and try to do all these things in one shot, that we set ourselves up for failure, really. I mean, we put ourselves in a position that it's not sustainable. And so stop and think about what change am I going to make that's going to be sustainable? And the first step is that making this first step, is that going to make me feel good? Often people fear change too because they don't want to feel the discomfort of the change, right? So whether it's a change in a relationship, whether it's a change in the way they parent, whether it's a change in anything, right? There's discomfort that comes along with that. But we have to almost welcome and allow that discomfort to be able to move through it. You can't go around it, because what ends up happening, and I use the phrase your emotional faucet, is the more you keep trying to avoid this change, you're just building block in your emotional faucet, right? It's like a big, gross hair block that needs to come out. And then at some point, there's going to be so much force that it's going to come out, and you're going to have no control over how it comes out, when it comes out, where it comes out. And it feels so much more intimidating. So we need to, do these things in small little steps that feel good.
That's fantastic advice. You're right. I think some individuals can have, the tendency to go all in. And like you said, we're just setting ourselves up for failure when we get overwhelmed with it's too much. I can't handle this. And, I think that's a wonderful way to go about that. Shifting gears a little bit, if that's all right, thinking about, what got you on this trajectory for, with everything that you've been doing, like, was there like a catalyst that you could point back to that you feel like was a defining moment, or was it just this evolution to where you are today?
It's a little bit of both. So I started when I was in 7th grade. I was having trouble, like, just connecting with peers. I've always been told you're an old soul, and I am very intuitive. I've always had a good read, and I didn't feel like I always kind of connected with peers my age. I connected more with older people. And so I wanted to understand that better. My mom, was like, why don't do you want to go talk to somebody? And at that time, it wasn't popular like it is now to talk to somebody, right? Like I was like, they're going to think I'm crazy. If my friends find out, I'm going to be, like it was, but I was like, you know what? I need to, I want to. And I'll never forget, like, it was just the best feeling to me to be in a space where I could say whatever I wanted. I could just be me. I could get it all out. There was no judgment. It felt amazing. And so I actually wrote my 8th grade career report on being a therapist. I knew, 100%. I knew it. I knew, like, I wanted to give that gift to other people, because it was just, and I was that person, like, my friends always talk to me about their issues with their boyfriends, or, you know what I mean? And so, and when I went to school, I loved it even more. So for that part, it was me seeing somebody that started that. And over time, I've worked in a lot of different areas of it. So I have worked, with people struggling with drugs and alcohol that were in jail. I've worked in foster care. I've run facilities. I've been an executive director. I've been in administration and on the front lines. And for that stuff, it's just kind of evolved. Like, I started manifesting before I even knew what manifesting was. And I didn't even know that that's what I was doing until I did a deeper spiritual dive, right? But as far as my career goes, I've always, anything I've wanted to do, I've done in my life, right? Like, anything I want to do, I do. I know enough about who I am that it will happen. I don't know when, but I know it will. And then as far as the Reiki thing, like, I was receiving Reiki from someone, and she's like, you need to do this for people. Like, you need to put your hands on people. And never in a million years did I think, like, I had always been interested and always received Reiki, but never did I think that I had that skill. And so it was actually during the pandemic, and she was like, I have these, great teachers. And I was like, yeah, why not? So I trained privately with them, which I was super grateful for because normally they did like big classes. But I know me, and because I can go into therapist mode, like I wanted to truly learn. I didn't want to take care of. Um, and it was wonderful. And selfishly, it was great because it was catered to where I was as opposed to like starting at a place where I'd already been to. Um, and then I just started doing it, and it has just evolved naturally. And I am a big believer that things will show up. But again, we have to kind of be aware, like when people present those opportunities, to take them.
Absolutely. Love that you brought up the point of, the learning environment for you so that you could learn and not take care of. Do you find that challenging in your everyday life?
Well, it's funny. Yeah, sometimes, but it's also funny because a lot of people think because of what I do for a living that I literally spend every minute analyzing everyone and everything. And I'm like, first of all, you don't pay me enough. Second of all, I don't have the bandwidth. Like, that's not real. So, anyone out there, therapists do not spend their entire day analyzing everyone. Like, it's not humanly possible. So, but yes, I have over the years, I've gotten much better at being able to take care of me, set some boundaries, do all those things. Am I perfect? By no means, but I, um, I feel much better about where I am in my ability to do that. Um, but it is by nature, I'm a lover. I'm a mush, right? Like I love helping people to feel good. I love sitting with people in their darkest hour. Like, because, and the other thing, back to your, sorry to sidetrack to your other question about, um, I forget how you asked it. About the first step. The other thing I wanted to say is stick with people that are your biggest cheerleaders. We all need cheerleaders. And if you think you don't, you're lying to yourself. Like, we all need someone that's in our corner saying, you're doing a great job, or dude, you're killing it, whatever it is. And like, I try to do that with the people that I work with because when we're going through change, one of the biggest things that's important to me is being able to point out someone's change. Even if they don't see it, I can. And so I say to them, like, you chose to do this differently. You chose to, whatever it is. And then they're like, oh, you're right, I did. Because we can so quickly minimize what we're doing, right? That being able to honor and see that is so huge. So I'm sorry I got sidetracked, but I feel like that's
No,
so important.
it is so important. I mean, that's why the name of the show is Into the Deep. We can go in any direction. Tangentville, USA. I'm all about it.
Okay, good.
I think I'm the mayor of
Good.
Tangentville, so it's
Oh, I love it. I love it. I can't, yeah, it's like a squirrel.
it it's so
Yeah.
true. And we I I love the aspect of, you know, we all need cheerleaders because it's true, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, and I love the adage of, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. And it was for me, when I first had read that, it had I had such an epiphany. It had such an impact on my life of where I was at that point and saying, gosh, like, this is important. You know, life as we know it, to the best of our knowledge, it's short, it's fleeting, and there are no guarantees except for a few things. So we got to make the best of it while we're here, help others, celebrate others, but also where we are celebrated and where we have people in our corner, like you said to your point. And I love that you brought up acknowledging when someone's made that change. We need to do that more often for each other.
Yeah, we do because it's hard to make change. It's scary. It's intimidating. And we all need a team behind us. We all do. It's it's the best thing ever. When you have people that can take their ego out of it and just celebrate you for who you are and what you stand for and what it's such a gift. It really is. And I'm not a traditional therapist in the sense that I probably don't follow all the rules as much as I should, but it's, I believe in that connection. I believe in that, you know, feeling their heart and them being able to feel yours. Cause I want people to know I'm human too. Like I'm no greater than anybody else. I'm just here in it with you. And I can give you a different perspective.
Absolutely. I love that. Is- I got to ask, in your opinion and your feelings and your thoughts, what's the one, I guess, one, I don't know if, I don't even want to call it stigma, but what is it that if you could tell people and I guess kind of break down the walls for people and their fears or thoughts of what therapy is that have never done it before, how would you describe it, or how would you, I'm not sure I'm articulating this properly, but you know, what's that one thing that you wish you could just say to someone who's never gone to therapy before?
What I would say to them is if that first phone call when you're reaching out doesn't feel right, move on. Don't don't force yourself to go see someone just because someone said they're good, or like, I'm not a therapist that's meant for everybody. Everybody's not meant to be work with me. Trust how the conversation feels. If you get off the phone, you're like, ugh, or that felt cold, or she's an idiot, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, then move on. Don't spend time trying to figure out why. Just trust that it didn't feel right. That's all you need. That is all you need. Keep it moving. Find someone else. And that's where you start. It needs to feel good. It needs and because if it doesn't feel good off the rip, when you start getting into uncomfortable stuff, it's really not going to feel good and you're not going to want to go back. And also like with kids, for parents out there, I don't believe in forcing your children to go to therapy if there isn't any major issue. Obviously, if there are, if they're harming themselves, yes, there are parameters around that for sure. But forcing children to go at a young age, how I've seen that play out is that very often then they don't ever want to go back even in the future. And that I don't want to do to our children. I feel like it's so important that they feel like they have a say in whether it's who the provider is or frequency. Like very often when I see kids, I say to them, how often you want to come? Like I'm not traditional in the sense that I'm like, you have to come every week for 45 minutes. I ask people at the end of each session, when do you want to come back? Because it's not my place to determine their process. Again, if it's an acute situation and there's, suicide or self-harm or something like that, different story. But if it's life stressors, the best engagement I'm going to get is when someone is invested in and feels like they have part in how often they come. So those are the things that I feel really strongly about is one, if it doesn't feel right, then it's not right. That's the only info you need is this doesn't feel good. Find someone else. You'll know when you find them. It's just like when you find a partner that you're dating. You know when it feels good, you know when it doesn't.
I love that. And it's so true. Um, Gosh, I remember, even just like my first experience with, a therapist in adulthood, I guess you could say, was like going to see someone and talking to them, but like it didn't work out because I wasn't doing my part. I wasn't telling the full truth. I was still
Yeah.
holding on to this like mask, this charade of like what I thought things were and what I thought I was and how I chose to present myself to the therapist. And
Mhm.
it takes time for the individual to realize, like, "Well, no, this isn't going to work because of me. I've got to do the work." How often do you
Totally.
think that, yeah, how often do you think that that occurs? I mean, it's got to happen often, I would imagine.
I think what happens is I'm a believer that different people come into our lives at different parts of our journey, right? So I may be a wonderful fit for someone at a certain part of their journey, but then they may need to move on to someone else who has a different skill set that complements where they're now at. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that can be a situation that comes up that, where people can get stuck. And I'm a person that I'll say, hey, do you think this is working? Do you think we need to look at maybe, I have no problem saying that. A lot of people don't. Some people do. I think the other thing is sometimes it's easier to stay stuck because it's a known. That may sound weird, but it's true, right? Like I know how it feels to stay stuck. So it's easier for me to stay in this place than it is for me to challenge my fear. As far as what you're saying, yes, I do think that there are a decent amount of times where someone feels like they're not getting anything out of therapy and blames it on the therapist, but in part it's because they're not showing themselves. And I tell people that from the beginning. I'm like, listen, I can only work with what you give me. If you are lying to me, that's on you. You know what I mean? If you want the best results, it's going to require you to get down and dirty raw. The best that you can for where you're at,
100%. So true. And I can attest that the benefits of it are astronomical. They're fantastic. I'm a huge advocate. And I tell my friends all the time, if you can do it, when you're ready, do it. Constantly, so that's why I love talking about it. That's why I love having the podcast and being so open about it, just so we can have that dialogue and that people don't feel that there's this stigma of going to a therapist or that there's something wrong with them. I think everyone could benefit from talking to someone.
Oh, totally. And I think that it's such a gift to know that space is yours. Like when you find the right fit, even if nothing monumental came out of session and you walk away feeling a little lighter, there's your data. That's your data, is that you feel lighter. That is your knowing that this is helpful. It's, it's that connection with our bodies and what we feel in our bodies. And it's huge. It's huge. I love therapy. I mean, I'm so biased, but I love it. But I joke with people like, I'm sure my kids will go to therapy at some point. Like, oh my mother was a therapist. She talked too much. Like, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, good, have at it. I'll help you find somebody good. Like it's great. It's great to have someone that's just for you. Mm-hmm. And they have no skin in the game. You know what I mean? They have no,
I love perfect. That. It's so true. So it's a little fear in there, maybe like, oh no, but it's just, I love that. It's just great to think about.
It's so real. Like I feel like we all have our stuff. None of us parent perfectly. None of us show up perfectly. Like it's good. It's all good. It's, we just, as long as we are willing to continue to take an inventory and continue to look at ourselves and how we show up in our lives and our relationships for ourselves, we'll be good. It's really pretty awesome.
I love that. Well, Jessica, I cannot thank you enough for this. Where can folks find you on the internet? How can they find you?
So I'm kind of lame. I have a website. They can just go to innertruthconsulting.com. They can also find me on Instagram, I guess. I had a team doing the Instagram, but then I'm taking it over, but I don't even know what I'm doing. So don't hold your breath for that. But my website is probably the best place to find me, is innertruthconsulting.com. I'm located in Watertown at the Center for Natural Medicine. My husband and I rock it out there, and it's I love what we do, and I just want to keep, I want to help as many people as we can help, because the world is hurting right now.
And there you have it. I cannot thank Jessica enough for her time, her space, and all her energy. I implore each and every one of you to check out Jessica's book, The Gut Check, How to Reconnect with Your Intuition, on Amazon, as well as through the link at innertruthconsulting.com. Thank you all so much for checking out this episode, as well as all the other episodes. If you can, take some time and hit that like button, and take some time and subscribe to the channel right now. Comment below and let us know what you thought of this episode, as well as all the other episodes. Thank you, each and every one of you. Until next time, take care of one another and keep thinking for yourself.